guys, it's Tina with Cali-Kay products. Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be going over making a melt and pour soap using a goat's milk base. That'll give you a finished product that looks something like this. This is a cucumber melon soap that we make with swirls, as you can see, green and white. Or you can make something just as simple as this soap where there's no swirls. It's just one plain color, and this is our lavender soap. Alright, let's get into showing you the supplies we are going to need. Alright guys, so let's get started going over all the supplies you will need to make your melt and pour soap. First, you will need your melt and pour base. As you can see here, I have taken it out of the container. This we purchased through Candle Science, and each container is about 2 pounds of base. From Amazon, you can get alcohol. The best alcohol to use is 99%, especially when you're swirling or making several layers so that your soap sticks together. You'll also need a scale, a thermometer, and here we have an infrared thermometer. You'll need some measuring spoons that you can get from Amazon or Walmart, Target, any other retailer. You'll need some pouring pitchers that are heat resistant, and these you can get through Amazon as well as Candle Science or other wholesalers. You'll need a soap mold that you can also get through Amazon. And here I have some paper towels to clean up any mess that I may make, as well as a silicone cutting board. I have my soap cutter here that's made out of metal. Here I have mica powder, and this is for coloring the soap. And of course your fragrance that you need, which in this case I'm using cranberry apple from Candle Science, and here you can see that I've already pre-measured my fragrance oil. So I'm going to cut up this soap here, and then we'll be back to show you the finished product of how I cut my soap. Alright guys, so typically for one batch I like to make 3 pounds, which is about 1.5 tubs depending on where you get your soap from. So here I've began to cut up the soap, and you'll see that I'm going to cut it into small cubes because it's just easier to melt that way. It's not the hardest thing to cut, but it's definitely not the easiest. And then I'll put it into my heat resistant melting pitcher. I like to put about 60% in one and about 40% in the other when I am making a combination of color swirls in my soap. Initially, I won't be able to get all the soap in my pitchers until I melt some, and then I'm able to put the rest in, just because it doesn't all fit in each individual pitcher at one time. Alright, so there you have it guys. We have these few left, but I'll be cutting it in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is heat up my soap base in bursts of about 30 seconds in the microwave, and then we'll see you back for the finished product of the melted soap. Alright guys, so we're back after the 30-second burst of fully heating our melt and pour base. So here you have it. Like I said, I like to do about 60-40 with my total of 3 pounds of soap. You have to mix frequently because it starts to harden and then you get clumps in your base. So for this one here, I am going to color it with my mica here. I don't really measure per se, I just kind of mix it in and see what color I get and go from there as far as if I want to darken it or not. You have to mix this in pretty well, just because it's powder form. The one good thing about melt and pour is that if it starts to harden or you start to get clumps before you pour your fragrance in, you can put it back in the microwave for probably about another 30-second burst. That way it can liquefy a little better. And for the sake of this video and making it easier for all of you who are beginners, I am going to be layering, but I'm only going to do a few layers just so you can kind of see how it's done. So this is not too much of a red color, rather it looks kind of pink. And because this is cranberry apple, I want to make it a little more red. So I'm going to add some more mica. That should probably be it as far as coloring goes. Don't want it too dark. I can tell you that in the last 4 months that we started the business, I have not purchased body soap from the store. These soaps are fabulous, they're moisturizing, and each bar lasts me over a week. You want to make sure you get all the mica from the sides. And the picture to my right, you see it's white. I'm going to leave that white for purposes of swirling, so that you could see this color a little better as well. You want to make sure to get all the clumps of mica out. If you can see here around the picture, the soap base is starting to harden there. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this before it starts to harden on the top. You'll see air bubbles there, but that's nothing you can't fix with your 99% alcohol spray. Alright guys, I think we are good there. Alright. So I am going to pour a little less than half into my white base, and of course the rest into my colored base, just because there's a little more in that one. I try not to heat the base once I've poured the fragrance in. You want to make sure you mix this very well. And I probably put a little too much in this picture here, but that's okay. We can always clean up the mess. Alright guys. Almost done, and we can start pouring. Yay! Alright. So the first thing that I like to do, I'm going to separate this here and bring my mold in the center. So the first thing I like to do, because I have more of my colored base, is pour that about 1/4 inch thick. And again, it's just preference. It's just depending on the type of look you're going for. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this in. It's pretty hot. I like to keep mixing, but what I'll do there, so now there's some air bubbles in there. I want to spray it with my 99% alcohol. That gets rid of the air bubbles, and that also will help to adhere the next layer of soap so that the soap doesn't come apart. And like I said, just keep mixing your bases because it gets hard really fast as it starts to cool, especially your top layer or along the sides of the pitcher. If you don't have pitchers, you can also heat in a heat-resistant glass container, such as the really large Pyrex bowls. That's what I began with, but I find it easier to do it in these pitchers just because not only can I melt in them, but I can also pour, and I don't have to transfer from my bowl to a pitcher. And it's just a lot easier doing it with these, a little bit less mess. So I don't let the base in my mold harden completely, but just enough to where if I blow on it, it ripples just a tad bit, but not really much, and that's how I know I'm ready to pour my next layer. If you pour it too soon, what's going to happen is I'm not going to have that solid layer at the bottom of my mold. And when I pour my next layer, especially if it's a different color, as in this case it'll be the white, it's going to go right through. Alright guys, so I don't see any rippling effect when I blow, so I'm going to go ahead and pour white next. And again, I'm going to do about a 1/4 inch. I'm not going to do a ton of layers in this video, just for the sake of making it easy for all of you who are beginning. Just so you can kind of get the gist of how it's done. So again, I'm going to spray it. My alcohol there. And again, remember, you want to get 99% alcohol. That way everything sticks well and your soap doesn't start to come apart. And of course, if you're not layering and you're pouring one solid base color, then you don't need alcohol other than for the very end at the top of your soap to get rid of any air bubbles. And like I said, just keep on mixing your bases so they don't get hard. Sometimes you'll see a little hardening at the top. You can just remove that or try to mix it in and see if it'll melt right back. The longer you leave it sitting without stirring, it's going to get harder faster. So I don't want this one to harden completely because I want to put some swirls in there. So I am actually going to go ahead and do that right now. And I just kind of zigzag my base there. Just get rid of some of those air bubbles, and sooner than later, before that one hardens as well, I'm going to go back over with my white to throw some swirls in there. I think it's so much prettier when you have the swirls than just something plain like this. Looks like this one is starting to harden. The next layer I put is going to be the red. You also don't want to spray too much alcohol, especially when you're swirling, because it's going to make your base runny and you won't have those pretty swirls that you initially had. As you can see here, you see that it's starting to harden. What I like to do when it's a little too hard to be mixed back in is I just remove it with my chopstick here that I like to use for mixing. I can get it out. You can see there, it's soap that's just started to harden, and I don't want those clumps in my finished product, so I will take that out. All right. We're gonna go in for our next layer. This one's gonna be a little thicker. Like I said, I'm not gonna do a lot of layers like I usually do, just because I want all of you who are beginning, I just want it to be a little easier for all of you. And again, I'm going to spray it. This one seems to have a lot of air bubbles, so you want to make sure you get as much out as you can. And this one I'm definitely going to let sit a little longer because I don't want my white to mix in with that layer. Alright guys, so I'm going to continue layering and we'll be back in a few minutes. Alright guys, so we're almost done. I'm just going to do the final pour, and it's going to be the same as my first pour, which is going to be a solid color of the reddish color here. And I'm just going to pour that all on top. Just till I get to the top of the mold there. Maybe a little more. And as you can see, it's not as liquefied because it's starting to harden. I'm going to pour what I have left into my white, and I'm going to mix that up. And what I like to do, so that I don't waste any product, is pour it into this smaller mold that you see here. And I can use that here at home or my daughter's, and I can also give it as, you know, just little gifts or samples to try. This one actually is a little clumpy, so I may have to reheat it again. I'm going to go ahead and spray the last layer of soap here. Get all the air bubbles out. And there you have it, guys. Here's our bar. So we'll be back to show you the finished product and so that you can see me cut it. Thanks, guys. Alright guys, so fast forward a few hours and now we have our molded soap that is hardened enough for us to unmold and cut. I have a couple cutters here. This is just a straight flat edge cutter, but this is the one that I prefer. It has little waves to it and it leaves your soap looking just a lot more nice. So I'm going to go ahead and unmold. So what you want to do is you want to loosen up the sides. You'll just turn it around. You just kind of want to gently push down so that your soap begins to unmold. And there you have your molded bar, huge bar of soap. So I'm going to go ahead and cut, and what I like to do, I kind of did markings for myself with the Sharpie on this flat cutting mat. So what I like to do is cut off a very small portion of the end so that I have the waves on all sides of my soap once they're cut. You always want to make sure to cut directly down so that your edges are straight. Okay, got it. So now I've cut a very thin piece of soap from the edge, so that way both ends of this bar that I'm going to cut will have the waves on it. And this can be used for yourself or as a sample. And now I'm going to cut. I try to cut 1-inch bars. And you want to cut straight down so that it's even. I think that was a little shy. Some people like to use just a regular kitchen knife, and that's okay. Just remember that you'll get flat edges as if you're using this. And I think I overcut a couple of bars, like you could see this one here. This here and this here are a little thicker than these, which means that this bar is going to be made smaller. So I could always cut this end to give the waves, or I could just leave it alone and give it as a sample, which is probably what I will do. But here you have it. A couple, actually I got 6 bars, 2 are really thick. But of cranberry apple soap, and you can see some of the swirls in here. When I initially poured the first pour and the last pour, I used the reddish color, and that you see at the top and at the bottom, and then the swirls are all in between, and they all look a little different depending on how you swirled and in what area. So there you have it, guys. That is exactly how you make melt and pour soap. Super simple. Doesn't take a lot of time, but there are little tedious tasks involved, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe below, and give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.